Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. Hey, small business people and lovers of good stories in general. This is Pablo Fuentes, and I want to welcome you to episode 48 of Small Business War Stories. This is a really fun one. This is Erik Axel Brunt. Erik Axel from Erik Axel Tattoos. He works at Crown Tattoo in Austin, Texas. And I sat down with him, and Erik's one of my teammates from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he is also the artist that I did a large piece on my chest. And we've gotten to know each other, and we've talked a lot about his business over time. And I was like, let's sit down and do this over a podcast. And he said, heck yeah, let's do it. And Erik's got a lot of good stories and a lot of interesting insights into what it means to be a tattoo artist. This episode is part of the episodes here, the Austin-based episodes we're doing before the start of the Soul of America 2 episodes. So again, we wrapped up in episode 46, we wrapped up all the Soul of America 1 episodes, which meant that we went all over the from Austin to up to Michigan and back down to the south. And Soul of America 2 is going to be starting in January. In mid to late January, we're going to be starting our Rocky Mountain tour. But in the meanwhile, we're focusing on Austin for a few weeks. So this week, we're interviewing Erik. And this episode is brought to you by Proven. Proven.com is a hiring tool for small businesses. It's very, very easy to use. You can go check it out and post your job to Proven. We post it to over 100 job boards, and then you can collect all the answers the responses from people in one place. And we also have a great blog. So blog.proven.com. We have lots of great content there for small businesses, and we're going to be rolling out a lot more. So I'm writing a book about all the experiences that I've had all over the road, learning lessons from people all over through the Small Business War Stories podcast. And we're going to be adding other resources there as well. So keep an eye out for blog.proven.com. We want to help you as a small business to succeed. That is our mission. That's what we do. So check it out, proven.com, blog.proven.com. Without further ado, I do want to get into the episode. Today I sat down again with Erik Axel of Erik Axel Tattoos, and he works at Crown Tattoo in Austin, Texas. And we are live here, and we are at Crown Tattoo here in the east side of Austin, and I'm sitting here with Erik Axel Brunt. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you, and you are a teammate of mine at both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and at Atomic Athlete. It's a workout facility designed to inflict unreasonable amounts of pain on people desiring to get stronger.
Absolutely. Friendly pain, though.
Yeah, very friendly pain. It's self-inflicted. But yeah, you also tattooed me a week ago.
I did.
In the center of my chest. So I'm familiar with this space. But I'd love to talk a little bit more about the tattoo business. It's something that I think has evolved a lot and changed a lot, and there's a lot of perceptions about it, right? So maybe let's talk about your story. How did you get started doing this?
Well, I got started tattooing. It was my introduction into the industry was actually through body piercing, and that was I think it was right around 2004. Had to be this. Yeah, somewhere around my birthday, I remember. And so I acquired a piercing apprenticeship by setting an appointment to get tattooed. Because I knew, the unwritten rule about getting an apprenticeship, you typically need to get work done at that shop.
Oh, I didn't know.
That's the segue in. Just because you want to get to know the people, the artists, and
yeah. But I was going to ask you about, because it's tough to get an apprenticeship.
It is, because you need to know who you're asking to help you, learn a trade essentially. Okay. So I'd already been to that tattoo shop several times. The owner, was also the piercer. He did all my piercings. He pierced all my friends. I'd been tattooed by one of the guys that worked there as well. Okay. So I set an appointment to have to venture onto my forearms. Where I couldn't necessarily cover it for every line of work. So it was my way to force myself into the industry because I thought I could potentially make it in this field of work or something. Either way, I just wanted to push myself because I did not want to do the blue collar thing I thought I was going to do because I went to college for law enforcement and have a degree in that.
I did. But you did. That is fascinating. I had no idea. I've known you for a while. I had no idea you did that.
Yeah. So either way, I set the appointment. Started the flame form tattoos that I have, and I asked the owner when we took a break and asked him if he would apprentice me, and he did. And I was just going like once a week on Saturdays and cleaning the shop. He taught me the ropes, and through that process, I got to know all the tattooers, and being around the tattoo art that was on the walls and seeing the tattoos being done every day, it got me more interested in actually doing tattoos. But it was super intimidating, as opposed to piercing was definitely had its intimidation factor for sure, because you're poking holes in people, essentially. But tattooing is permanently marking somebody's body, so it's far more intimidating. But being around the art and seeing the tattoos done, I started getting a sense of like, wow, I feel like I can offer something. Because I see this design that this artist drew for his client, and I see something else in my head that I would have done. It's like, maybe I could get into that. So I became really good friends with a tattooer. His name's Doug. He started tattooing when I started body piercing, so we're growing up in the industry together. And so him and I would paint at night, like after work and stuff.
Did you have an art background before? Had you drawn before?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a formal art background necessarily. I just I took high school some art classes, middle school a lot of art classes, and even in elementary school. I grew up. My first memories were using crayons and drawing on the walls in my bedroom and furniture and getting whoopings and punishments.
Your mom loved that.
All of my furniture had drawings on it, like the headboard, footboards, dressers. Drew on everything with crayons. But so I've always drawn. I grew up with comic books and I loved it. So I always drew. It didn't have much money, but we always had crayons and colored pencils and things like that in the house. So that's what I would do.
So you had some aptitude and inclination.
Absolutely,
yeah. Because I'm terrible at drawing. I can.
Yeah, it's like it's all about visualizing in your head. If you can put down on paper what's in your head, I think it's somewhat of a talent, I guess, that some people have and some don't.
And how many tattoos did you have when you started?
When I started apprenticing, I had.
Because now for our audience's benefit, you have 90% of your body is covered in tattoos.
Yeah, maybe about that.
Yeah.
Maybe
especially
85,
after
90.
your head a couple days ago.
Having my scalp outline just recently definitely pushed it up to possibly the 90 percentile.
Sounds good.
But just having that art background in general, just enjoying, because I grew up loving drawing, and then in college is when I got away from it. But being around it in that tattoo shop inspired me again, and so I painted with my friend. He taught me how to oil paint, and which takes a lot of patience, and so does tattooing. So I essentially picked up a tattoo machine in my third year of piercing, and a few of the guys around the shop helped me out. It showed me how to do things, set things up, and
are you supposed to tattoo yourself first or something like that?
No,
is that not
necessarily.
Okay.
I did practice on myself a little bit after I ran a tattoo machine, but the trickiest thing is holding the tattoo machine and handling it correctly when you're doing a tattoo the first time. It feels so unnatural because it's hard to balance it in your hand,
and it's much thicker than a pen too, right?
It's heavier. It's like has a lot of back weight and stuff like that. So learning that was tricky. So I used synthetic skin to start. I strapped that to an armrest, and I tattooed that after hours one night. I had a few sheets of that.
So there are products that people sell.
You can order it through tattoo supply companies or whatever. Okay. Some places will carry it's like synthetic skin.
Could you use like pig skin or something?
Yes,
like that?
And I did. I went to the butcher and got a sheet of essentially salt pork. It was like a layer of skin and fat.
Yeah.
And I strapped that to an armrest as well and tattooed that.
Yeah.
But that a little bit more tender than human skin. It could tear, it tears a little bit easier.
Okay.
But it was definitely a better than the synthetic skin for sure.
Because it's not just about drawing the right drawing, but it's also how deep you go into the skin, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, depth and how much control you have. Like speed matters, and whether the machine's running at the proper speed that your hand is moving as well. Because you don't want the machine to run faster than with your hands moving. They have to complement each other.
Wow.
You have to find a balance. That's
cool.
the whole process of when you're learning, when you're in the phase of your apprenticeship, when you're actually doing tattooing, is you have to develop that.
I mean, your work was spectacular. I mean, it's been a week or since we sat down here, and it's a pretty heavy work piece, and it's
definitely saturated.
It's been healing. It's been healing really well. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Let's talk about getting started. So let's talk about this whole apprenticeship a little bit more. I know that from some folks I knew back in the West Coast and in New York that do tattooing, a lot of them, even when they post jobs, say like, "Hey, I need a shop assistant."
Right.
I don't want apprentices.
Yep.
Like, no, stay the hell out. If you want to learn how to tattoo, go somewhere else, kid.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that, and it kind of feels like a little bit like Fight Club. You remember when people show up at the house and they tell them to stand outside in the rain, and like and
it's
they
essentially
come
what it's like. Yeah.
Okay.
Properly, anyways. I mean, there's shops that will take an apprentice on for compensation. You could pay for an apprenticeship.
Oh,
but
so it's like school.
And
tattoo college.
It's somewhat. But there's some artists that will do that, but you also still have to earn your way in. But then they'll charge you if you want an apprenticeship. That's fine too.
Okay.
Or sometimes it's just if you like the person, you want to teach them, you don't charge them. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't. But I mean, I feel like at a minimum, you should be tattooing at least 10 years before you take on an apprentice, in my opinion.
Oh,
I think.
Yeah.
I'm at 10 years, but I still I don't know if I would necessarily take on an apprentice yet. I think.
Or maybe soon.
I don't know.
So it maybe depends some of our listeners can.
If it's the right person, this individual would have to worship me.
Okay.
to get my interest.
All right. So now you know. If you want to learn from Erik, you need to come worship him.
Starting out apprenticeship wise, because my introduction was via piercing. So I had the guys, tattooers, actually show me the ropes a bit, how to set up a tattoo machine and fundamentally do a tattoo. But I didn't actually learn to tattoo well and take into consideration the skin and stuff, how you treat the skin when you do the tattoo, till I actually got a actual tattoo mentor, which happened when I moved to San Diego in that third year of piercing. And found my tattoo mentor. His name's Rico, and he took me under his wing. He essentially hired me at his shop to do tattoos because I had done some small, simple stuff, and he had me actually do a tryout at his shop. That's how he would look for help, essentially. He didn't want an apprentice, and I was fake it till you make it. I went in there acting like I could do tattoos, but I mean, he saw right through me once I did my demonstration tattoo. I did it well. He was impressed that I drew my own design, and I listened to his helpful hints when he was watching me do the tattoo. He was just making little suggestions, and I listened.
This is on a real person.
Yeah, it was on a friend of mine in San Diego. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Who are your first clients? How do you go from?
Oh, it's easy.
Yeah.
Well, being that I was already a body piercer, and I was being heavily tattooed at that time. When I my first year of piercing, I had most of my work done. I'd say 75% of what I have done on my body now, I had done in the first 2 years of my piercing career. Essentially, I wanted to get covered quickly, so I wanted to look like I knew what I was doing, and it worked. Because when it came to tattooing, I would just mention it to my friend clients, and they're like, "Oh, I would get tattooed by you," I'm like, "Well, I need someone to, some practice, people to learn on." Like, "Oh, I'll do it in a heartbeat." I had people lining up.
Really?
I had to deny people because I didn't want to tattoo women yet, because I'll make a dude ugly, but I'm not gonna make a gal ugly, So. But yeah, it was no shortage of volunteers.
Interesting.
In the beginning, even now, I've seen it with other apprentices. You just post something like, free apprentice tattoos. People love free. They will take a free tattoo and it's typically, because it's it's an art form, and anyone who doesn't have any art inclination is impressed by someone who has some sort of artistic skill. So it's like, wow, they can do this.
Yeah,
I mean,
music's similar.
than,
People look at you like, oh, you can play a chord? Like,
so here, play me, like, play me a song. Like,
Right.
it's the same thing. It's like, oh, you can do a tattoo. You can do it on me, you know?
Okay.
So it was no shortage of volunteers.
That is not what I would have expected.
Yeah, no, it's easy.
Okay.
Getting them. Getting them in the door.
And you basically were, I mean, that's like the epitome of, the proverbial burning of the ships when you get to the island. If you said that you wanted to get covered in tattoos so people would take you seriously as a tattoo artist.
It worked.
At that point, your career as a banker at Bank of America was probably over.
It was, yeah. Once I ventured onto my hands, yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely covered parts of my body that weren't visible first, for sure. I mean, granted, I did venture onto my forearms fairly early, just to push myself in this direction, but I wouldn't advise that to anyone necessarily.
Yeah.
But I did wait to go onto my hands or my neck until my chest was covered, my back was covered, my legs are covered, my arms are covered.
So how do you, as somebody who sees a lot of tattoos, so you think that it does affect people's perception when you have like the neck or the forearms and things like that?
And being this style of tattoos, I think, has greater influence. Being I'm heavily tattooed, but mine are fairly bright.
Yeah.
I'm more approachable than someone who may have more dark imagery.
Interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Because I have grandmothers and people of all walks of life approach me, and it surprises me because I won't even look like I'm in the mood to talk to someone.
Yeah.
And people spark conversations with me everywhere I go. Gas stations, in the states that I travel in, like just random strangers will just come up and start asking me things about my tattoos.
And you think it's because of the color?
I think it's because of the type of tattoos that I have. I mean, for sure, people have opinions of tattoos in general. I haven't had any bad experiences necessarily, but I have friends and even gals that I've dated that have had awful experiences because of their tattoos.
Like what?
People, one instance I'm thinking of in particular was traveling with a gal I was seeing, who happened to be my ex-wife now as well. She's heavily tattooed as well. And we stopped at a gas station and travels between New York and Texas, I think it was. And I was at the car pumping the gas, and she went into the store to get waters for us and stuff. And some gentleman just stopped her, looked at her, and told her she was going to burn in hell.
There you go.
Yeah, and I'm sure that gentleman wouldn't have said that to me if that was me in the store, but you never know. I've never experienced that, but it's happened to her on numbers of occasions.
Well, you train jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, so you're probably not the guy that you wanted to.
True story, but that's
good.
I look like a linebacker as well. I wouldn't go that far. But
still working on it.
Kind of chiseled though.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Thanks to Atomic Athlete. Yeah.
That's great, man. Cool. So, taking that one step further, let's say that somebody with no tattoos came in and asked for a forehead tattoo or a neck tattoo.
You know what?
Has that happened?
It interestingly enough, there was somebody in here. I wasn't here, but that came in. It was like a week or two ago. I heard about it, that she wanted a tattoo on her forehead, and my coworker denied her. She does have some tattoos on visible areas, but the fact that she said forehead was just like, not so much a good idea. I have done it over someone's eyebrow. I've put lettering,
you have one of your eyelids tattooed.
Yeah, on my eyelid. Yeah, but if someone who doesn't have tattoos necessarily, like anything visible yet, that wants something hyper visible, like on the face, me personally, I'll tattoo it after one warning.
So how does it go? I'm like, I'm all clean cut. I come in. I'm like, I would like a neck tattoo. And
yes.
What would you say to me?
I would tell you, okay, that's a very visible area. Is it okay with the career field you're in? Is it going to be okay for your future? And if you say, whatever the case is, I'm like, okay, let's do it real big right there. And do you want color, Even
okay, so hold on, let me push that. What if it was like an 18-year-old or?
Yeah, I dealt with that in Chicago. I did the kid was 19 on top of his hand. I did a rose on the top of his hand, and he had arm work, like sleeve work. But I was like, you're young. I was like, top of your hand, that's a very visible area. You can't cover it unless you wear gloves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Being in Chicago in the wintertime, you can get away with some gloves. But summertime, you're not getting away with gloves. And I told him, because it's okay, like career-wise. He's like, yeah, I work in a factory, and I'm also going to school for, it was like drama or some shit, I don't know, something. But so I was like, okay, I gave him his one warning, and I tattooed it only because if I don't tattoo it, he's gonna go to another shop and someone will tattoo it, and I feel like at least I'm gonna give him the best tattoo he can get, and that I can give at least. So, because my mentor would turn people away constantly, and he may still do that. I'm assuming because some people have a certain moral compass, and they'll just refuse it. And it's like, I don't want to play daddy. I'll give you the warning, but I'm going to give you a good tattoo at least. It may not be the best idea for where you are in your life, but that's not my decision.
Have you had people come back to you like being like, "Oh, that was a huge mistake"?
No,
like
I have not.
Okay.
And maybe that's what somebody doesn't want to deal with, or if they bother their conscience. My conscience only bothers me if I don't do a tattoo I feel like I could have done my best work on. Other than that,
Has that happened before?
I don't regret. Yes, it has.
So tell me about that.
It was probably about 5, maybe 6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, more like 6 years ago. A gal came in. It was at another shop I worked at. It was more of a walk-in shop, and I had just moved here to Austin. I'd only been here maybe a year, and I was starting to building clientele. Essentially, it took a couple of years to build some clientele, and she was a walk-in, and she wanted a Harry Potter tattoo, and it was this little design out of one of the actual books, and it was just a simple little stick line wand with some twinkles or something, and she wanted it on her wrist, but she wanted it spaced out in a really bizarre way. And I remember telling her, like, I don't think that's going to look very good. We should, like, put them closer together, put it on this little angle right here. But she was really insistent on having it the way she wanted. And I was like, okay. And I did it, and I lost sleep that night. Not that the tattoo was done poorly. It's just the way the placement was, and the design wasn't altered the way I felt like it should have been to have it make a little more sense, to look proper on the body.
Yeah.
And I lost sleep over it, even though she was happy. And right. But I had trouble sleeping that night, and it bothered me for a good week.
Yeah.
And so I told myself I won't do that anymore. Like, even if I know I can execute the tattoo well enough, if it's not something I feel is going to complement the body or look good on the body, I refuse. I won't do it now.
So you'll refuse that?
I have.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So actually, that's a great second to your creative process. So you and I just went through a creative process that lasted a few weeks.
Yep.
To come up with the bear in the center of my chest, and we had 2 or 3 sketches going back and forth, and a few different ideas. And what we were going to do evolved a few times. What is your design and your creative process, and how do you work with people's input, and how do you marry that with kind of what you just said about when people want something that you think is just not going to look that good? Yeah,
it's definitely, like, I wouldn't call it a battle, but it's definitely a dance. And you have to, as an artist, there's a certain amount of times you do have to compromise a bit, but you shouldn't ever feel like you're doing something that's not going to look good ultimately. So, as you and I were going through the process, we had good discussions because you were willing to come into the shop and talk with me face to face, and it's much easier to communicate that way as opposed to email or text messages when it comes to communicating like feelings.
Yeah.
So we were able to actually go over little details like the little curve of the eyebrow on the bear's eyes, and I could show you little differences, and it made the process a lot easier and smoother, and I could demonstrate why this works and why this looks good,
right.
and convey what you wanted to convey with the tattoo without trying to push you somewhere you didn't want to go, or have you push me where I didn't feel comfortable with the design. So we were able to meet in the middle, but still it's exactly how I was hoping it would look.
Yeah.
And made you ultimately happy as well, because you were able to see some of the variety, and it's like, okay, I can see why this works a little bit better than that.
Right.
In the scheme of
like the active versus
aesthetics
passive
and stuff.
aesthetics
Yeah. So it made our process was ideal when it comes to if someone has a very distinct, pretty defined image in their head or message they want to convey, and they don't just come in and knowing what the type of work I do and like, hey, just do this for me, and they're just happy with whatever I design because it's mine, So
I'm sure that happens though.
Oh, it happens a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How do you? And that's cool.
That's fun, yeah. That's I like that, because then sometimes I can try ideas that I have that I can't necessarily do with somebody who's more specific. And what comes to mind is a gentleman's. It started out as a half sleeve. We extended it to a 2/3 sleeve now, but it's initially just started with a koi fish, and he wanted to do a couple flowers. So I was like, oh, we should do some chrysanthemum flowers. They're really nice. And he's like, yeah, cool. And so he just kind of let me draw what I wanted to draw. His specifics were only koi fish, a couple of flowers, and water and stuff. And so it started out as a half sleeve with a chest panel, and I ended up doing a flower that was turned backwards on his chest. As I've wanted to do that in the Japanese traditional style, as I've seen it in this old in this book by this traditional Japanese tattooer that I admire. And he's a little bit of an older gentleman, and it looked beautiful. The flower just was turned the other way, and it was on the chest. And I thought it was so cool. I'm like, I want to try that in one of my designs.
Yeah.
So I basically used that as inspiration for my design, and then put a few other forward-facing flowers on the rest of the arm with the koi, and he loved it, and it came out awesome, and it's one of the ones I'm most proud of. Awesome. Because I was able to take that little, if you can call it a risk, I guess, it kind of is, I've never done that in a Japanese traditional design before. I've done it in other type of things where it's just a big flower boutique thing, and some are turned sideways, backwards, frontwards, upwards.
So it sounds like a lot of it depends on the mindset that the customer comes in.
The client, for sure.
Cool.
How open they are,
Let's talk about business. So what is you and I were talking last week a little bit about the structure of this particular shop.
Right.
And there's some people who where it works like a hairstylist, where you have a chair, and then some people where part of their hourly rate goes to the shop owner.
Right.
So what is maybe some of the pros and cons? I mean, have you ever thought about opening your own tattoo shop? And is that something what are the pros and cons of working here under each one of those arrangements?
Okay. Well, when I was starting out in the business, it was a commission based, and that's when whatever you charge, you give a percentage to the house, essentially. And every shop's different about what percentage they want. Some shops start with a 50-50, and they'll provide some of the tattoo supplies that we would use. And that's a little bit normal when it's a 50-50. They'll provide some of the items. But
what? Like
they'll have like
needles
and things like that. Yeah. Cleaners and paper towels and things like that. But a lot of shops do a 60-40 where the artist takes 60, the house takes 40%.
Okay.
And then you tend to provide all your own supplies at that point. And then, some have a 70-30, 70 towards the artist. That's when you're more established usually. And it's a busier shop, and you have enough of employees as well,
Okay.
But I do booth rent essentially, which it's similar to hair salons because they do it both ways as well. And usually with booth rent, it's someone that has clientele, and you're not relying on people walking in the door because you're setting your appointments, and you basically come and go. You just rent your space.
So this is your corner every
This
time.
is my corner.
Okay,
yeah.
so all your stuff here is.
I just keep my stuff here. I pay for that space. That space.
Do other
is
people
mine.
ever use your chair if you're not here?
Only if they ask me.
Okay.
If we
but
have
it's your chair.
But it's mine. Yeah. If we have guest artists and they need a spot to work, and it's like I'm not coming in, you can use my space.
Okay. Cool.
But that's my rented space essentially.
But that is because you're more established and you have your own customers.
Yep. Yeah.
Got it. And so that's a preferable arrangement, I presume.
Preferable in the way that because you don't have to sweat anything necessarily. Like, you're as busy as you want to be.
Right.
So it also puts you on your hustle, though.
So how do you manage that?
Relax.
So I'm sure
Yeah.
that means that there are times when you have a lot of work and a lot of cash coming in, and then times where, because you're either traveling or you're doing something else, your cash flow goes down. How do you manage that as your own business?
Well, interestingly, traveling doesn't necessarily hurt it.
Okay.
Unless you travel a lot. Then you, if you can make an arrangement with the shop owner, I pay monthly. A lot of guys just pay weekly. They'll pay their booth rent every week. I just do it at the beginning of every month because I don't even want to think about it. I just pay it like my house rent essentially. But for me, traveling doesn't really harm me because I only travel like every other month at the most usually.
And you tattoo sometimes when you travel.
Yeah, and I travel so I can make some money, but I'm still paying for my space.
Yeah.
But it's okay because I'm gone for, let's say, a week to 10 days. I'm scheduling people. So I come back and my schedule will be stacked that rest of that month usually because I'm gone for a week. So that month will be pretty solid when I get back because I don't book out that far. It's usually on average only like 2-3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks out, just depends. But if I travel, then I know I'm set like for that month.
And when it comes to booking that, how do you find these customers? You do a lot of stuff on Instagram, right?
Yeah, they find me essentially.
You don't really do like traditional advertising in a sense.
No. When I first crossed over to booth rent 5 years ago, I did pay for some Google kind of
Okay. How did that work?
thing. I don't know that it didn't work when I was paying for it. I remember, and I filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau.
Okay.
Against
Google?
No, against the whatever advertising management company that I went through.
Okay.
And but ultimately, I do pop up in a lot of searches. But I did pay for Yelp ads though.
Okay.
At the same time, so I had the Yelp thing going, and then I don't know if that Google. It wasn't Google, through Google.
Okay.
But it was some management company that said, "Oh, we'll get you on the top 10 list page on Google." I'm like, "Oh, cool." And then that first year, they promised it in that first year. I never saw it in that first year, so I never renewed with them, and I was upset. And anyways, but I did pay with Yelp, and so I think just doing both of those essentially did get me to pop up a bit more on searches. Yeah, so. Because I had a lot of people tell me like, oh, I was searching tattooers in Austin, and you popped up. I'm like, oh, cool.
Actually, so Austin must be a really competitive market. A lot of people have work here, and it's a very art, inclined town, right? So
yeah. So now like that sparked it a little bit, but then ultimately it just comes down to word of mouth. Like it's all referral based work essentially. Like I tattoo. My client has a friend, or like they email me like, oh, so and so, you tattoo so and so and this person, and they recommend you, and I looked at your work and I really like it. They'll go to my website or the shop website or Instagram or Facebook. And
I'm sure like communities that you and I are both part of, martial arts and working out, those provide also a steady flow.
It's an outlet, yeah, for sure, and it's just an exposure to a new demographic that may not have a person, like they may like tattoos but don't really know a tattooer. And it's just like with any business, if you have some kind of FaceTime with that individual, you're already more comfortable with that person than any other person in that industry.
Sure.
So me being the tattooer at Gracie Humaita, they're going to gravitate towards me because like, oh, I know a tattooer because he comes here and trains. I should talk to him. It's already gives that comfort level.
Makes sense.
Which, yeah.
That's how I ended up here.
Yeah. So. And so that's hugely beneficial. So, being that I have a versatile lifestyle, I'm not just tattooing and painting. Like, some tattooers do that, and I was actually talking to Scott, the owner of the shop here, about him and I were just like, man, we don't paint enough, but we have lives outside of tattooing that we have a lot of interests in outside sources. So I don't really have the time to paint because I want to train jiu-jitsu. I want to go to Atomic Athlete. I want to go rock climbing. I want to go shooting at the range.
Yep.
I want to go hiking. I want to do these things.
For sure.
In my free time. I don't want to just be always in the art mindset.
Yeah.
It's tiring.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What are some of the oddest or wackiest things you've seen in your line of work? I'm sure the stories that I'm sure it's a deep well to pull from.
The thing is, it's usually wacky individuals, you know, because we get all walks of life, and I've heard the wildest stories as well. Like I don't have the craziest stories. I've dealt with some clients that have been definitely
like what?
A little out of the box. Well, one that comes to mind, I can't remember his name, so I'm not by any means calling him out. So he was a very muscular dude, and he was getting a tattoo on his ass cheek. Okay. And it was his wife's name for the 7th time on his body. And
the same wife or different wife?
Same wife. Okay. Same wife.
That's kind of
her name like all over different parts of his body. And then this day in particular, he had just bailed her out of jail and came to the shop and wanted "Property of Candace" tattooed on his ass. And I was like, okay. And Candace was right there. Candace was chill.
All right.
He was super hopped up and sweating, like very hyper. Made me a little uncomfortable because they would go into the bathroom together, and it's like, are they doing drugs in there? You know, those kind of things can happen. So either way, he was just he was a mess when I was trying to tattoo him. He was jumping all over the place, flexing, yelling, growling, and I was just like, you need to relax. So when messing these lines up on your tattoo, you're moving too much. And his wife was trying to keep him calm, and he was just like rah, screaming and flexing, and you almost done? Are you almost done? It was crazy. Wow. It was a nightmare.
I made it a point to not ever ask you if you were almost done.
Yeah.
So I mean, I do know it's important to just sit still, right? If you don't sit still, like, you can mess stuff up.
I just found it interesting. Then he ended up contacting me like a couple months later, and I did her maiden name on him on his pubic mound. Yeah. He just keeps messing up with her and needs to redeem himself and get her name somewhere on him. Wow. I guess it's a weird relationship. I don't know what their dynamic is, but I'm okay with that. I hope I don't hear from him ever again. He's not a fun person to tattoo.
Wow.
Makes for a wild story, but
it makes for a wild story, but maybe not the best experience at the time.
But the craziest tattoo I've ever done, I did color in the back of a gentleman's ear completely. 2-tone, one top half red, bottom half black, or vice versa. I don't remember exactly.
Wow.
But completely saturated the entire backside of his ear.
That is...
And I jumped on that opportunity because I finished an appointment and there was a couple of walk-ins that came in, and my coworker was like, "Hey, can you want to do one of these walk-ins?" Because he was going to do one. I'm like, "Yeah, what's you want? And what do you guys want?" And one dude was just like, "I want to color the back of my ear in." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll do that one," because it's obscure. I'm like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And it came out really badass. But
tattooing the cartilage, is that different?
Everything. It was tricky. It's a slower process. You have to kind of take your time and really work it. And
wow.
He took it really well, and there's a picture of it on my Instagram. I had to post that because it was an obscure one.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Wow,
cool. So what would you say is the number one piece of advice that you have for people who want to set out on their own and do something? You know, maybe not necessarily work for a big company, or who want to either go out and be an artist and set out on their own. What's the number one piece of advice you could think of?
Do something you're passionate about.
Okay.
No passion, then there's going to be no progress, I think.
Yeah.
You have to love what you're doing. That's the only time I feel like you really give your all. Like deep down, you know inside whether you're giving your all or not.
Right.
Everyone knows it. So that's all that's my best advice. It's like, just follow your heart. And if it feels right, just keep doing it. You know, doesn't matter how long it takes.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't start tattooing until I was 30, and I just turned 40 a couple of months ago.
Wow.
But it took me a little while to find what I was looking for. I mean, granted, I was piercing I think I started at 27 or whatever, so it was a little late because I wasn't sure what I was going to do.
What were you doing before that?
Well, I went to college for law enforcement,
yeah.
So after that, I was trying to get into any kind of law enforcement program, whether it was cadet program or I was applying to different police academies and police stations that were hiring. And this was in Massachusetts, in the Massachusetts area. Took civil service tests. I tried doing corrections in Connecticut. I took a state test a couple of times, did really well, made second interviews, but just never got hired 'cause they wanted someone with military background, which didn't have. So either way, it's just never really worked out for me. So in that meantime, I was working like security jobs. I worked security at like Mass Mutual and stuff. And then I was just picking up odd jobs. Construction. I did aluminum scaffolding for a summer. I was working in a factory. That was part of my college work as well. When I was in college, I did work at a factory as well. Then I ended up working as a substitute teacher in an elementary school for a while, and nighttime custodian at the same school.
Wow.
And yeah.
So it took you a while, like a lot of searching.
Yeah. And that's when I finally discovered body piercing as a potential career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, man. You're in a good spot now.
A little time, yeah. And then moving to Austin was like the best thing I ever did.
How long ago was that?
Career. 2010, I moved here.
So 7 years ago.
So yeah.
Cool.
It's such a tattoo-friendly city.
Yeah.
And
is it one of the most tattoo-friendly cities in the U.S.?
I feel like it is. It's among like San Francisco and New York City, which I imagine New York City is really hard because it's a very high level of tattooing there. Just like a lot of states have really high levels, but I just feel like it's a concentration of really good artists there. But same with Austin. We're up there. It's pretty amazing, and it was a little intimidating when I moved here. I moved here from San Diego, and San Diego is a good tattoo town as well. Don't get me wrong, but it seems like there's a higher concentration in Austin of really skilled artists, like just well-known guys and stuff around town. So it's super intimidating, but I feel
now you're one of those guys.
Well, I just feel like if you treat people nice, you'll do well in anything you do. I feel like, because I'm not the greatest artist. I may not even be the nicest guy, but I definitely treat people well. So I feel like that's the edge that keeps me
I don't think you're
busy.
giving yourself enough credit on either one of those fronts. So.
Oh, I don't know. Perhaps. It's all perspective.
What's your vision? What do you want to do in the next 10 years? Where do you see this going?
I'm not sure. Like you asked me earlier about potentially owning a tattoo shop, and that's not something it's something I thought of when I first got into this industry. Like, when I was a body piercer, I'm like thinking, I'll eventually learn to tattoo, and I have a tattoo shop and call it like Piercing Tiger Tattoo Dragon or something. I came up with some silly name, but as I've been working in the tattoo shop, I've done the books for the owner Scott here when he's been out of town. I did handled the finances and banking for the shops, and I see the headache of running a shop that you don't actually work in, being that he owns 2 shops. And it can be a bit of a headache. If being here, he works here at Triple Crown, so it's smooth sailing here. We all get along. Everything's great. But when the owner's not at the shop they're working, it can be a little bit chaotic. If there's, that if you want to call a father figure or type in the environment, it can be a little less stable feeling, I guess. And I just wouldn't want that kind of headache because, tattooers come and go. Artists are traveling. We're a traveling type. We're gypsy-ish. And I would hate to worry about filling that chair. Like, so-and-so left and so-and-so left. I need another artist. I got to hire another artist. And I don't know if that would be something I would want to
that's a pain in the ass because it affects the reputation of your shop too.
That too, yeah, because that's a huge thing. Is shop reputation is a big deal. You want good.
So as your vision, you want to continue to get better, but not necessarily under the guise of having your own shop.
Yeah, so I mean, I could see myself if I owned a shop, it'd be something smaller, like a handful of guys. Something like this size of Triple Crown is kind of ideal.
Okay. How many people are here?
I think right now we have 7 total.
7. Okay.
So even I think somewhere in the 4 to 5 range is golden. Even it could even be less, 3 to 4. Like a co-op kind of thing would be kind of cool. But I don't know. I don't really see myself owning a tattoo shop necessarily. I do want to own a business eventually. I don't know what yet though.
Okay.
I have a friend who's wants to talk to me about maybe partnering in a tattoo related business, but not sure if I want to go there. We'll see. I mean, if it's something that I could see myself doing.
Well, you're in a good place now. So.
Yeah.
How can our audience find you? What are your website and Instagram handles and all that?
Yeah, my website is Erik Axel Tattoos.
That's ERIK.
ERIKAXEL TATTOOS.com, and also at the TripleCrownTattoo.com is actually it's Triple Crown Tattoos. I think that's plural on that one. .com. Of course, the shop website, and then Instagram is Erik Axel _TC, and Facebook is just my full name, Erik Axel Brunt. But
awesome.
Yeah, those are pretty much the outlets.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and sharing your story with us today.
Oh, absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
My man.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Small Business War Stories. If you enjoy the show, share it with a friend, or you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our blog at blog.proven.com. If you have an idea for us, we'd love to hear it. Please email us at podcast@proven.com. See you next time. Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes.